discretion is advised.
Which conspiracy theories do you know that actually have some merit? I think it's very plausible that some people or bots repost popular AskReddit questions to farm fake internet points. Some portion of those accounts are controlled by, or will be sold to, companies or governments who can then use the accounts to participate in and influence opinions of real Reddit users. Same answer to this question as always. The government really did hide what crashed in Roswell, New Mexico back in 1947. Was it an alien spacecraft? No. It was a high-altitude nuclear detection platform that was part of something called Project Mogul. Before we had spy planes like the U-2 and the SR-71, the military used high-altitude balloons to detect nuclear detonations in the Soviet Union. One of them crashed in the desert outside of Roswell. The wreckage was found by a rancher, and the government of course spirited it away and created a cover story that it was a weather balloon. Because it was a highly classified program, it took about 4 decades for them to finally come clean about it, government bureaucracy and all, and this led to everyone thinking it was a conspiracy to hide an alien spacecraft. It was a conspiracy, but aliens were not involved. There's a rumor US Army Private Lavina Johnson, whose autopsy revealed broken nose, black eye, loose teeth, burns from a corrosive chemical on her genitals, and a gunshot wound that seemed inconsistent with suicide, did not, in fact, kill herself, and the Department of Defense covered up her rape and murder by another soldier. I absolutely believe that is something the dude would do. Also, for what it's worth, bloody footprints were discovered outside of her living quarters. The FBI set the fires at the Mount Carmel Center to end the Waco siege. On top of this, I believe the ATF shot first, but that is basically proven due to the door that Branch Davidian lawyers were inspecting due to direction of bullet entrances disappearing, an entire door disappearing out FO thin air, plus how the ATF planned to show the footage that would prove the Davidians shot first, but not too long before the time it would happen. They conveniently lost the only copy they had and never have found it since. But back to the fires. The CS gas that the FBI used was reported to be flammable under what the just said were certain circumstances which, under the guidelines of Attorney General Janet Reno, would have broke her orders to use non-lethal and non-flammable gas. The recordings from the bugs that the FBI used to prove the Branch Davidians poured fuel and started the fires, which the FBI had been able to sneak into the Mount Carmel Center through milk crates to provide the families inside with milk for the infants in the center, were so distorted and damaged they would have not been caught permissible in a normal court, yet they were able to be used in congressional hearings. Not to mention that for hours as the fires burned, the FBI refused to let firefighters pass roadblocks to get to the Mount Carmel Center. There's more to the topic, but these are just a few of the red flags that set me off and makes me believe that there was a cover-up. I once saw a conspiracy that Timberlawn Behavioral Center in Dallas was a continuation of MKUltra. I normally brush conspiracies off, but every once in a while there's one that seems ridiculous, but ends up ringing true. If you had told me a few years ago that mega rich elites have massive sex trafficking ring and fly to a Caribbean island to abuse women, I would have thought you were wearing a tin hat. I don't believe the whole Manchurian Candidate aspect of the theory, but I think there's some truth to this Timberlawn conspiracy possibly having caused years of abuse to keep the gravy train rolling for the doctors and pharmaceutical companies. The basic gist is that one of the former lead psychiatrists, Colin Ross, has written books about MKUltra and mind control and is an expert on seemingly every shady side of psychiatry. The program director in the late 2000s was John Brian Crusius, who is the father of the El Paso shooter, Patrick Crusius. After Timberlawn gained some notoriety following some rapes and murders at their facility, the feds came to do safety inspections. They failed every safety inspection and willingly closed their doors in 2018. You can go down the rabbit hole on both of these guys and they seem pretty ducking weird. Oddly enough, in 2009, when I was 15 years old, I was sent there after an incident with a police officer while I was being arrested. I knew how immorally Timberlawn was run back then, But what shocked me about the conspiracy theory was that I actually think it's more plausible for the place to have ties to MK Ultra than for it to just be a poorly run facility. It was seriously too bad. There was kids getting beat down by staff and booter-juiced every single day. We all knew at the time that the doctors would try to agitate us so we would act out and they could keep our beds filled longer. At the time I was there, no one in Dallas would ever choose Timberlawn if they had a choice, so I think they were reliant on court-ordered patients. Anyways. Like others have said, the whole Epstein thing is fishier than all hell. That we've possibly discovered more proof of extraterrestrial life than we've been told. Not anything like Men in Black, but it wouldn't shock me that there's more stuff out there that gets covered up. Less a direct conspiracy, but that we've come much closer to total global annihilation more often than we know. That governments are mostly inept, and they would suck at keeping the vast majority of so-called conspiracies a secret. Government officials use movies and shows to both confess their crimes and to create a useful tool to prevent being held accountable for them. So, if someone speaks out about something, they can point to the movie and say, "You mean like this movie plot? Haha." Energy drink companies slowly decrease caffeine content till you buy more. They are not regulated by the FDA and new ones always seem to get you buzzing only for the first month or so they are out. All women in the entire world share a chat in WhatsApp or something similar to remind each other to wait until the boyfriend/husband sits down before they ask them to do anything. The guy who owned Pedophile Island killed himself in prison while the cameras happened to be off, while fake guards happened to be on duty, and the same thing just happened to one of his top men. The FBI also raided Pedophile Island and we never heard anything about anything that they found. Also, exactly 0 clients of his have been charged, even though we have flight logs of exactly who visited Pedophile Island. Pedophile Island, with a satanic temple. Also, there are dozens of confirmed conspiracy theories spanning decades that show the intelligence community is full of absolute inhumane scumbags and there has never been any reform and nobody has ever been held accountable. Not a conspiracy theorist whatsoever, but life extension therapy with actual promising results. I could see some cabal of the super rich locking that one away for themselves. They have such disdain for the 99% and the last thing they would want is a population explosion. They're the only ones elevated enough to make it to the deep future. 9/11 was definitely an inside job. Outside of all of the evidence that's already been presented over the years, there's a movie that came out called The Long Kiss Goodnight. This film stars Samuel L. Jackson and it came out in 1996, 5 years before the actual tragedy occurred. At the end of movie, the bad guy explains how when the first World Trade Center bombing happened, information came out that the CIA had direct knowledge of the plot, which all happened because of budget cuts. When Jackson asks if they are gonna fake a terrorist attack to scare money out of Congress, the bad guy says, "I don't know how we are gonna fake killing 4,000 people, so they are gonna have to do it for real. Then they get their funding." Don't believe me? I invite you to look it up. I've never trusted the government since. Intentional brain deaths in hospitals. Basically, a member of hospital staff gets paid off to induce brain death in a patient. Sometimes it's to harvest organs, other times it's just a hit. I doubt it's a commonplace thing, but where there are serial killers and people willing to throw a couple $100,000 to millions to commit the act, I could easily see it happening. Martin Luther King Jr. wasn't killed by who they say killed him. A trained ex-military and CIA sharpshooter tried to recreate the shot that they say would have killed MLK, and he couldn't do it. So that brings doubt that the inexperienced person they said did it. Not a conspiracy theorist whatsoever, but life extension therapy with actual promising results. I could see some cabal of the super rich locking that one away for themselves. They have such disdain for the 99% and the last thing they would want is a population explosion. In their eyes, they're the only ones elevated enough to make it to the deep future. That modern advertising and marketing all comes from the work of Stalin and Hitler's regime. We took the power of propaganda and found a way to use it to market products, and the American way of life modern media is so filled with propaganda and advertising trying to sell you the dream they want you to have. Don't believe me? Look it up. 1. The hypersonic pulse engine jet to intercept nuclear missiles exists and is already in service. This expands to the missile warning in Hawaii 4 years ago being an actual threat, not a false alarm, but it was shot down by one of these planes. 2 billionaires only want to reach space so badly because they want to create their own territories free of global law. This one is obvious, as there are no laws in space yet. The first ones there will be the ones to make them. 3 governments of the world have tangible and confirmed proof of extraterrestrials, and may have even come into contact with them. This is another obvious one, as there's zero transparency and an abundance of security in relation to every single bit of information regarding them. If there truly was no evidence of it, why the secrecy? Why the redacted documents? Mattress Firm is a money laundering shell company for the uber rich and crime lords. The amount of mattress firms in small towns is unsustainable, as the average American family buys a new mattress every 8-10 years. And profitably of mattresses isn't enough to offset operation costs. This mattress firms are indeed a shell company to launder money. Engineered obsolescence. It came out a few years ago that Apple wrote into its iOS updates to reduce battery life, and I know from an Ford mechanic that Ford engineers its various parts to break about 3.5 years after selling. The CIA had a famous gaffe where they put a microphone in a cat they tried to train so it could spy on people. The program failed spectacularly and they released the documents of it. But dogs are smarter and can be trained far better. Why not just train dogs? My theory. They 100% did that and the program worked perfectly, so they kept the documents hidden. They've surgically implanted microchips in dogs they've trained to spy on people. A Portuguese dub of SpongeBob played in Brazil right before the 2013 Olympics. Said dub created a frequency that caused everybody to shit their pants simultaneously, and the Brazilian government covered up the incident and used amnestics to make people forget, and destroyed all news articles about the infamous Portuguese SpongeBob incident. I posted this on a similar post, but my favorite conspiracy theory that I've discovered recently is that Lee Harvey Oswald really did act alone. There were no other shooters, and the government knows it and has absolute, would make everyone believe it proof. The problem is that so many people now believe the opposite, and so much money is spent every year on JFK conspiracy stuff, that to reveal the truth would ruin too many lives. So the government lets people keep on believing the other stuff. Cryptocurrency is essentially a Ponzi scheme, and that the US government doesn't shut it down, because despite the claims of anonymity it actually makes it easier for them to track crime and tax evasion. The US government conducted experiments on unwitting civilians with little oversight or even basic scientific methods. Google search MKUltra, Hanford downwinders, Tuskegee experiments. Is not speculating, it's fact. I don't think that SARS-CoV-2 was necessarily created in a Chinese lab and released on purpose. That said, COVID has definitely been much worse and more expensive for individualist societies than it was for collectivist societies with less individual freedoms. And while I don't believe the Chinese numbers, they definitely had an easier time with COVID than Western nations. Click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.